Hello everyone, it's time to Nefus and Chill. I hope this finds you safe and healthy. In this video I'll be going over the Greymoor iteration of the Infinity Dragon Knight tank build I created for the Storm patch, which in itself was based on an older tank build I had for Veteran Black Rose Prison called the Battery. This was one of the most popular builds, judging from the fact that a lot of you guys reached out to me on Twitch and in Discord telling me that you really enjoyed it, and asking if there's going to be any changes with the Greymoor patch. If you guys enjoyed my tank builds for Storm and want to be kept up to date on them every patch from now on, definitely subscribe to the channel. I'll always appreciate you doing so. Just a heads up, in terms of itemization, nothing has actually changed, so you can skip this video if you already have the exact same traits, item sets, and so forth. You can keep pretty much the exact things and pretty much the exact traits. In fact, the Infinity DK tank build actually got a huge buff in Greymoor due to the item set changes, buffing up the monster set and the weapons it uses. In terms of stats, I however did tweak a couple things here and there, but nothing too major. The focus of the Infinity Dragon Knight PvE tank build is for it to be used for all 4 main content, including Dragonstar Arena and Black Rose Prison, while having literally infinite sustain for yourself and for your groups, regardless of whether you have a healer or not, in addition to increasing group DPS. I just want to also give you guys a heads up, I'll be going much more in depth, as requested by quite a lot of you, about passive skills and so forth. And while you can tank on any race with this build, I recommend Nord, Argonian, Imperial, and Orsimer. In the Storm video, I showcased this build using a Nord, and in this Greymoor iteration, I'll be showcasing the build using an Imperial. As I just said, the Imperial is going to be showcased with the Infinity Dragon Knight tank build, and as I mentioned a couple times already in both this video and the Storm video, you can definitely be any race for any of the tank builds I post. I do recommend Argonian, Imperial, Nord, and Orsimer, just because objectively speaking, numbers-wise, their stats tend to give beginner players and intermediate players, even experienced players, a much easier time in veteran content and the harder DLC content. But regardless, if you do learn the mechanics, if you do recognize certain tells, if you do get used to the content you're running, for sure, race definitely doesn't matter. It's, as far as tanking goes in this game, generally it's definitely dependent on player skill. But for the purpose of this build, I'm showcasing Imperial instead of Nord, just to show you guys an idea of what different things you can adjust or tweak, because I believe in the previous video, there was an absolutely outstanding comment that asked, it's a really good question, what if I'm an Argonian or whatever, how do I adjust or do my stats? The simplest answer I can give in terms of this build is you're going to pretty much always put points into health, all of them. And I'll get into why this is later, more in depth, but just so you know, the stat attribute allocation is always dependent on your preference, on your build, and what kind of stats you want to see right here. But for this build, I believe firmly, after testing it a few times in Black Rose Prison on both PTS and Live, that more health is generally better for this build. Now, to go over the Imperial passives, we can just ignore this one. The Imperial passives are Tough, Imperial Metal, and Red Diamond. Tough increases their max health by 2,000, which is a fair amount, definitely comparable to Nord in terms of the raw health stat. We also do get max stamina, which is a really great stat bonus for a lot of tank setups, regardless of whether you're a Dragon Knight, Necromancer, or a medium armor wearing tank, or a heavy armor wearing tank. Red Diamond is going to give us the cost reduction of all our abilities by 3%. This not only reduces the cost of our Magicka or Stamina abilities, but it also reduces the cost of our ultimate abilities. In addition, when we deal direct damage meaning light attacks, heavy attacks, or whatever direct damage abilities like Heroic Slash, we heal ourselves for 391, and restore 333 magic and stamina. And this effect occurs once every 5 seconds. Now this may not seem like a big deal, but once every 5 seconds plus the cost reduction is definitely going to help you quite a bit in most forming content, and actually all forming content, especially in Black Rose Prison and Dragonstar Arena, the DLC hard modes. It's definitely more noticeable. A lot of people ask me, well, what's the difference between Nord and Imperial? A lot of endgame tanks choose Nord due to the old gen and stuff like that, free mitigation. But after testing both Nord and Imperial, I would say that there's definitely a slight difference in sustain. I think the Imperial still definitely has overall, generally over a longer period of time, and this is true especially if you're going to be running pickup groups or people you've never run content with before or newer players, that generally fights do last quite longer than you would run with your guildies or people with high DPS. So I've found Imperial to be a little bit better, but again, as I keep mentioning, you can take on any race. And now to basically go along with the Imperial, the last build video, we did have the Atronach Mundus Stone, which boosts our magic recovery, and I did mention the alternative Mundus Stone was the Lord. And here, just to go with the stats, just to show you guys that you can play around the stats and still be successful, I've chosen the Lord. In addition to being an Imperial, we're going to stack the health. In the meantime, we don't really need the Atronach. In fact, I would say this is probably one of the most important changes we're going to make to the Infinity Dragon Knight tank build in terms of stats, because I don't think we're going to need the Atronach Mundus anymore, given the buffs to the weapons we'll be running for Greymoor. In terms of stats, we're going to be having 20,000 max magicka, almost 43,000 maximum health, almost 22,000 maximum stamina. Magic recovery, health recovery, and stamina recovery all seem fairly low, but that's okay. Spell damage, weapon damage, whatever, kinda irrelevant. Weapon crit, spell critical, irrelevant. Spell resistance and physical resistance. This is a pretty interesting part. I get a lot of questions regarding resistances nowadays, and in terms of resistances, as long as you hit around 24,000 resistances, and as a Nord, you obviously get a bit more than this physical resistance, but this is fine. Generally, you don't have to hit 33,000 resistances, which is cap. Now, 1% mitigation is equal to about 660 resistance. So, after you do the maths, adding up all those mitigations, you get 33,000 resistances. And you don't need cap. A lot of people think you need cap, and a lot of people make the mistake of trying to build as much as possible into resistances, and then they lack other things like stam, a decent health pool, a decent mag pool, which, again, it makes sense to a new player that the higher resistances you have, the better, but at a certain point, after about 28,000 resistances, you kind of don't really see anything different. And there's primarily two reasons why this is. First, if you make a mistake as a tank, and you die, it's usually not because of resistances. It's usually because you failed to block a heavy attack, which would have killed you anyway, despite having 50% resistances, or 50% mitigation from resistances. The second is a lot of the deaths that tanks seem to have is due to mechanics, and mechanics are not really mitigatable, especially white mechanics. So again, those two reasons are two of the biggest reasons why 33,000 resistance is not really a big deal to get to. Otherwise, in this build, once we buff up with Major Ward, Major Resolve, we do end up with a still decent amount of resistance. If you feel like the resistance is a bit lacking, you can make up for this in CP, trait, or race. In terms of food, we're going to be having Bewitched Sugar Skulls. This does give the best max stats, the most max health, slightly more max magic and stamina compared to the regular purple tri-stat food. That's not to say you can't use purple tri-stat food. And then again, while it is an idea to use like Witch Mother's Potent Brew, I would say you don't really need Witch Mother's Potent Brew with this build, because the build already gives enough sustain for you to pretty much last any fight in terms of duration. Potions you'll be using are going to be pretty much regular tri-stat potions represented here. You don't have to buy crown or try restoration potions. They have the exact same stats as the in-game craftable ones by players, but definitely these are going to be the go-to potions for you. In terms of item sets, traits, and enchantments, we're going to go over them right now and explain what exactly changed for Greymoor and why this set, or rather why this build, got such strong buffs. Now the first set we're going to be looking at here is going to be the monster set, Symphony and Blades. Symphony and Blades, a lot of people initially looked at the changes to it and noted that the return on the primary resource, if we read here, when you heal an ally who is under 50% of their primary resource, grant them Meridia's Favor, which restores 570 magic or stamina every 1 second for 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 18 seconds per target. In the pre-Greymoor patches, Symphony gave back double the amount of that magic and stamina every 1 second for X amount of time, and the cooldown was per target. Now, initially, yes, the value did go down. However, the wording on the last part of this tooltip is really important. This effect can occur once every 18 seconds per target. Right now, for both trial groups and dungeon groups, you have, well, specifically trial groups where there's 12 people in a raid, you have as many supports, both healers and both tanks, where Symphony. The reason why this is because Symphony can only proc on one person at a time, pre-Greymoor. Post-Greymoor, now in Greymoor, that we only need one Symphony in the trial group because it's going to affect every single person. For dungeon groups, this is also a big buff to Symphony in terms of utility, because now, instead of just giving resources back to 1 out of 3 people in your group, whether they're DPS or a healer, you're giving resources back to everybody in the group, which technically is more regen per second, mathematically speaking. And also, you don't have to worry about the 2 other people who may not also get the Symphony and Blade. So it's definitely less RNG, less chance of people fighting over it, or less worries about, will they get my Symphony and Blades proc in time. And this is pretty integral to this build, because not only is this build about offering sustain for yourself, but also offering sustain to the group. And this is a pretty significant change, and I will definitely keep this. It's a pretty strong buffed set now, and it plays well into the Infinity build. In terms of the traits, we have Infused on the head, Sturdy on the shoulder. Enchantment-wise, you don't really need to get Prismatics, but I do prefer them on the infused body pieces. You'll see here soon enough. Otherwise, I would pretty much do health glyphs on everything. Or if you don't want to do health glyphs, you can, again, as I said, it's preference. Stats are preference. A lot of people come to the ESO University this would ask pretty much the same question before reading the frequently asked questions section of the Discord. They always ask, where should I put my points as a tank? 10 into Magicka, 20 into Stamina, and the rest into health? Again, dependent on you. For the first 5-piece set, we're going to have 5-piece Yolnahkriin. And in terms of traits, we're going to have Infused on the chest and Infused on the greaves or pants. As I just mentioned, definitely prismatic enchantments are stronger when you're putting them on infused traded body pieces, because the infused trait does increase your armor and enchantment effect by 20%. If this was sturdy, I would get a lot less, not a lot, but a bit less out of the prismatic enchantment, the tri-stat enchantment. Anyway, we do have sturdy on the rest of the pieces, so in total we have 3 infused and 4 sturdy pieces. In terms of glyphs, again, same thing, health on the small pieces, prismatic on the large pieces. Now, why Yolnahkriin? Yolnahkriin is a really good tanking set. It came out with the Elsewhere patch, and in terms of stats, it's pretty condensed. Maximum health, a free minor ages passive, which is not huge damage mitigation, but it is still free mitigation. It adds a good line of maximum stamina, another line of maximum health if you are wearing Perfected. If you don't have Perfected, that's fine. You're just going to be missing out on about 1,000 health, which is not going to make or break this build. The 5th piece bonus is when you taunt an enemy, which is pretty much at least every 13 seconds, right? You give yourself an 11 group members minor courage for 15 seconds, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 120. And this effect can occur once every 8 seconds. So this is pretty much going to be always on cooldown in pretty much all forming content. And you'll be wondering to yourself, well, Nephis, isn't this for just trials? It says 1100 people. Well, yeah, it can be good. It can be used for trials, but in 4-man, it's really strong. And the minor courage, a lot of people think, oh, it's just 129 weapon and spell damage. They forget to take into account that that is gonna be more than 129. Just beyond the tooltip, you guys also have to consider the fact that other people are also running with you. So for example, the minor sorcery passive from a Templar, let's say, once it activates, it's going to boost your weapon and spell damage. In turn, that's also going to be pretty much boosted as well by Yolnahkriin. It's not just 129 weapon and spell damage. It's actually a pretty noticeable, significant number once you add it on top of other multipliers. So again, this is the boosting your damage, the group's damage passively. Because by passively, I mean, you're doing your job already, you're taunting things as a tank, so this is kind of a free thing. And also, in terms of stats, the set is really good. Free max health, and free max stamina. No tank I know is going to complain about this. In terms of the secondary 5-piece, it is on jewelry and on the back bar. And Olorime is going to be pretty much completing the group damage boost portion of this build. In terms of traits and enchantments, we have Infused on the necklace, Arcane, and Arcane on both of the rings. It doesn't matter which one is Infused or Arcane, but this is kind of probably my the best setup I found for this build is Infused on one piece and 2 Arcane on the other pieces. And the reason being is, depending on the enchantment you want to use, the Infused trait is really, really strong trait. This will boost the enchantment value, whether it's a block cost reduction enchantment or a stamp cost reduction enchantment. A lot of people ask me, well, why didn't you do one block cost reduction? Because I simply don't need it. We'll be covering that with champion points later on in the video. But otherwise, if you think you do need it, for sure, go for it. This is not all set in stone, guys. It's sort of pretty much a template for what you can definitely experiment or theorycraft with. However, I found stamina cost reduction on the Infused piece to be very, very good in terms of my sustain. I mean, especially as an Imperial here, because again, let's not forget about 3% cost reduction added on top of the fact that we do have 2 stamp cost reduction abilities. And look at that tooltip. Look at these tooltips. It's pretty good. And also, we can't forget the fact that the stamina cost reduction from these enchantments also affects roll dodge cost. That's right. Roll dodge is affected by these stamp cost reduction enchants. Block cost is not affected. Block cost is covered by a different glyph. So again, if you want to use that, go for it. And on the third jewelry piece, we have Magicka cost reduction. Again, plays nicely with the Imperial passive, but also it definitely helps us because the Dragon Knight tank can have pretty expensive abilities. So for example, Igneous Shield, which is going to be integral to our infinite sustain, is 3,693 with 1 regular Magicka cost reduction. And here, it jumps up quite a little bit. Not huge, but it's definitely noticeable. So it's pretty nice over a long period of time. In terms of the back bar weapon / trait, it's going to be a lightning staff. And before I get into the why it's a lightning staff, I forgot to point out what the set is, excuse me, but from the tooltip, it's a 2-piece Magicka recovery, which is nice, but not really gonna be the best in terms. It's just free Magicka sustain. That's pretty much it. We also did get minor ages. Now, minor ages on both Yolnahkriin and Olorime do not stack. So you're not going to have 10% damage mitigation, you're still going to have 5% damage mitigation since the same minor and major buffs and debuffs do not stack on the same target. In terms of the 4th piece bonus and the 5th piece bonus, it's okay if you don't have perfected Olorime, you can do regular or Olorime. Both are fine. All you're going to be missing is 1000-ish max Magicka from non-perfected, which again is not going to make or break this build. It's just nice to have. The 5th piece bonus here is casting abilities that leave an effect on the ground in combat will create a circle of might for 10 seconds. You and your allies standing in the circle gain major courage for 30 seconds, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 258. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. And just like the minor courage, guys, major courage is gonna scale. It's gonna be a big scale to it, big boost to it from both passives and innate weapon and spell damage that your DPS will have, because obviously DPS will be running weapon and spell damage glyphs, damage glyphs and so forth. So the Olorime plus the Yolnahkriin major and the minor courage. Remember, they're not both minor courage. They are major and minor courage. These stack. And this is a huge, significant DPS boost to your group. Now, I know a lot of people out there still think Olorime is a bad set because you can't put it on pugs or people who are running around, but you actually can. I've made so many videos covering this, so feel free to check them out. I don't want to waste your time talking about that. An alternative to this, I'll talk about this later, is that there's a different set that does offer major courage. I'll touch on that later. In terms of the trait and enchantment on the backbar lightning staff, there's 2 reasons why we have a backbar lightning staff. First, it's to keep up the Crusher enchantment. For those of you who don't know, a wall, whether it's a lightning, ice, or a firewall from a tank, is gonna proc the enchantment while this wall is active. So let's say I put a wall on the target, it's gonna last for 14 seconds. That's going to try to proc the enchantment on the back bar. Even if you're in your front bar here, that Crusher enchantment is still going to proc while the wall is going. So it's a really easy, convenient way for the tank to apply Crusher while doing other things, so that you're not constantly constantly spamming it or light attacking with it to inflict the Crusher enchant, which is a really significant DPS boost as well. That's free penetration for the rest of your group. 2108 physical and spell resistance reduction is nothing to joke about. I mean, penetration is king for DPS in this game, so definitely worth it to have it. But why a lightning staff? Why not an ice staff? Why not a fire staff? Well, lightning staff is pretty interesting. So, and this will play into why we have a charge shock enchantment on the front bar. But basically, once enemies are concussed, and a lot of people get confused here, concussion and off balance don't mean the same thing. If you set things off balance, or rather, if you set concussed targets off balance, like it says here, blockade of storms sets concussed enemies off balance, that off balance will translate into both sustain and damage for the rest of your group. For example, in the blue tree CP, where it's prominently used for DPSing, most damn DPS and magical DPS for Greymoor will have this exploiter perk. Increase your damage done against off-balance enemies by 10%. That's a lot. You don't need me to tell you how much 10% could definitely boost your group DPS by. But again, this has nothing really to do with concussion, which is going to be procced by the charge shock enchantment. So once, let's say on the boss, you proc the concussion on the boss, that's when you can also set the wall down and set it off balance. So that's pretty much concussion and off balance in a nutshell in relation to the Infinity Dragon Knight PvE tank build. And also, you also have the added convenience of proccing Olorime circle. Olorime can be procced through many things, many AoEs, like blockade, alter, the Earth and Heart ability, Ash Cloud, Cinder Storm or something like that, or Eruption. There's a lot of things that can proc it, so definitely wall is just also a nice bonus. In terms of the weapon's front bar, because you honestly, just like healer setups, you only need Olorime realistically on just one bar. We are free to have these 2 ability altering weapons, and these 2 weapons come from Veteran Asylum Sanctorium. You can get these non-perfected or perfected, doesn't really matter, but they actually buffed the hell out of the Asylum Perfected Sword and Board. Like, the value of it just went up straight up, and I don't know why they buffed it. it's a pretty ridiculous buff. The value of it pre-Greymoor was definitely significantly less. It was about 1600. So let's read the tooltip. So like when you reflect or absorb a spell projectile with defensive posture, you restore 2200 magicka for free. If defensive posture expires without reflecting or absorbing a spell projectile, you restore 6600 magicka instead. And the reason why this is so good is the values went up. It went from like 1600 on the first part of the tooltip and like 4000 something or something to 6600. That's just pretty magicka. And as a Dragon Knight tank, as I explained in the skills section of this video, this is going to be really important. In terms of item alternatives, I want to touch on this before we move on. Mythic items came out. And there's two Mythic items that you could potentially use with this build. We have the Bloodlord's Embrace. This will require you to potentially probably forsake the monster set if you want to run the Yolnahkriin or a different 5-piece set. But this is gonna be a ridiculous sustain set in both PvE and PvP. Blocking an attack from a blood-cursed enemy, which you can blood curse by bashing them just once, restores 1535 magic to you once every second. That's insane. And with this, and I mean with Symphony even, I don't know, guys. That's just too much in my opinion. But if you guys want to try this out, go for it. Go ahead and theorycraft with it. The other Mythic item we can use is a Tonal Constancy necklace. While your stamina is less than 50%, increase your magic recovery by 450. While your magic is less than 50%, increase your stamina recovery by 450. And if you guys are at all familiar with how Dragon Knight Heart or Dragon Knight passives work, this is really strong too. It's a really strong contender to replace a potential 5-piece or even the monster set in this case. So as a Dragon Knight tank, if your stamina is less than 50%, you get a 450 magic recovery boost, which in turn will grant you a more Igneous Shields, which drew the passive of where is it? Helping Hands gives you more stand back anyway. So and while your magic is less than 50%, which is likely with this build probably, increase your stamina recovery by 450, and that 450 stamina recovery while you're heavy attacking for some stand back, that's a buttload. Okay, but anyway, the other alternative item sets that we can discuss for this build, a lot of people have been asking me, well, if I don't want to run Yolnahkriin, if I don't want to run Olorime, what can I run? For Olorime, in terms of the alternative, you can run Spell Power Cure on the jewelry and staff, or both bars, but I kind of wouldn't recommend it. You could do like 3 Spell Power Cure on jewelry if you don't have access to Olorime, with 2 light body pieces of Spell Power Cure, and then you can figure the rest out with Yolnahkriin's 3-piece on body and probably something here on the back bar with a Yolnahkriin staff. But the downside of Spell Power Cure is you have to run Alter, which you will probably have to run anyway, or Energy Orb anyway, because that's how you're going to proc Symphony. A lot of people kept commenting on the previous video that they didn't see, or I guess they didn't watch the entire video, but basically the tooltip says that when you heal an ally, that's a key word. Healing yourself with Dragon Blood, like here, is not going to proc Symphony on either yourself or a group member. As a Dragon Knight tank, you have to have Alter, Orb, or the Alliance 4 skill line Vigor, or a class-based heal that heals other people like Cinderstorm, or Cauterize from Inferno passive, or Inferno Morph. So there's a lot of things you can proc Symphony with. It's just you're going to have to find the bar space for it. Typically it's going to be Talons or something like that. Just depends on what your group needs at the moment. Now, in terms of skills, or rather in terms of more alternative item sets, we're going to actually go over this right now. We're going to have a Battalion Defender is a decent one. Dragon Guard right here. Akabiri Dragon Guard is a decent one. Cost reduction of ultimate abilities, which translates again nicely with the Earth and Heart ability of Battle Roar. When you cast an ultimate ability, you basically get resources back, free resources back per ultimate usage. And the more expensive the ultimate, the more resources you get. So that 15% cost reduction is pretty nice. Although that does also affect how much resources you get from it. So that's one of the sets I would recommend as an alternative. Battalion Defender is also nice. It's pretty much basically like Yolnahkriin in terms of the condensed stats, like health and stamina. In terms of group utility, successfully blocking just means blocking. Heal any direct damage, projectile, or whatever. Heal yourself or a group member within 15 meters of you for 2350 health. This effect can occur once every 1 second, which means in a trash pack pull, you're going to be hit more than once every second. At least once every half a second. So this is going to be guaranteed to proc. In terms of the other sets, we also do have I believe it was Eben. Yeah, it was Eben. So Eben is a pretty solid set to wear. You can pair this with Yolnahkriin, and Eben's just going to give you free max health for both yourself and your group members. And health is a really nice stat for most tanks starting out, or even most tanks in endgame. So definitely a recommended alternative. In terms of skills, the skill bars haven't really changed much. In terms of, again, proccing Symphony, you can use Cinderstorm, which also does proc Olorime, coincidentally. You can also run Altar, which is pretty nice. You just kind of cast it and you forget about it. In addition, the Altar also does proc Symphony. And Energy Orb is also on the back part, but for most forming content, I would recommend Altar over Energy Orb, because one, the Altar provides a strong synergy for everyone to use if they dip below 50% health. That's going to restore 40% of their max health back when they synergize the Blood Funnel synergy. Whether you want the green morph or the red morph of the Altar, that's up to you, but I personally prefer, for most forming content, the green, or the blue, the red Altar, I'm sorry. The red Altar, because it lasts longer in terms of duration, so you kind of don't have to keep an eye on it for too much. The green morph, or Sanguine's Altar, or Overflowing Altar, is going to give you better burst heal upon using the synergy for your group, but that burst heal is not really needed for any forming content, in my opinion, but either way, it's preference, up to you. Energy Orb, we talked about this, but that's, I think, in my opinion, Altar is better. The synergy, the passive minor lifesteal that's given to your allies, plus the duration, it's just better overall for your sustain management and for group utility. On the front bar, we have Unrelenting Grip. This is the bread and butter of any Dragon Knight tank. This is what you use to pull in enemy ads, ranged ads. You can also use this as a soft aggro, and for more information on soft aggro, taunting, or whatever in ESO, definitely check out the Everything You Need to Know aggro, soft aggro, and over taunting video I put out a long time ago. Ransack. Now Ransack is going to be up to you. A lot of people ask me, well, why don't you run Pierce Armor? Well, that's because I can also run Elemental Drain for that major breach if I have a mag DPS composition for my 4-man. If I don't have a mag DPS composition, Ransack is fine, because that offers major fracture still for my stamp DPS compositions. However, the Ransack still offers me minor protection, which is a pretty noticeable defensive buff. So that reduces your damage taken by 8% for 15 seconds. You can get this in other ways, like the Sijic Undo morph of Temporal Guard. If you slot this on your front bar, you gain minor protection only on that bar though, so that's a downside. If you want minor protection on both while you're swapping bars, or on either bar, Ransack's a clear winner here, as it's pretty much an all-in-one package. If you can't, or if you don't think you can run Elemental Drain, or if you don't think you have enough bar space here to run Elemental Drain, or that you feel like you're not safe, or you don't feel safe enough to in certain groups, sure, definitely morph to Pierce Armor. This is up to you, like I said. Igneous Shield. Igneous Shield is going to not only give you major mending for 3 seconds, it also is going to give you a bigger damage shield, which in comparison to its other morph, Fragmented Shield, it's like 3 less seconds of major mending, but a weaker shield. And own damage shield absorbing 9,156 damage. That's pretty significant because one, if you choose to do so, you can tinker around with the value of damage shield by investing into the Bastion CV, which I don't recommend. Second, the damage shields are going to scale off of your own resistances. But when applied to other players, for example, this can affect other players or NPCs. If okay, because that NPC doesn't want my Igni shield. However, the resistances do affect shields now, so that's pretty noticeable in a lot of PvE content. Heroic Slash is going to be almost indispensable. Minor Maim is very significant in damage reduction. 15% is a lot. In addition to inflicting minor maim on a boss, that may hurt your group with mechanics or whatever. You also get minor heroism, granting you one ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 12 seconds. And this is going to contribute to your sustain as a Dragon Knight tank. Because again, we have to think about the passives here, like Battle Roar. Speaking of passives, I'll go over these later as well. Defensive stance. Defensive stance is going to be very, very important here. Because not only does it give you a passive damage mitigation plus damage block reduction, it also is important to have because this is how you proc the perfected defensive position set. So if you notice right here, let's see, I'm using Igni Shield, I'm holding block, Igni Shield for everybody, even me, and I'm getting stand back. I start using defensive posture. And I see a lot of beginner tanks use defensive posture unnecessarily when there's no projectiles incoming. And this build will actually probably help them learn that, or not learn, but get around the fact that they are losing out on a massive amount of sustain because they're needlessly spamming it when they're holding block and there's nothing coming. But if you notice right here, if I proc it preemptively before it expires, look at that Magicka. That's insane. 6,600 Magicka before it expires, as I said. However, if you do reflect a projectile or absorb a projectile, you restore 2,200 Magicka. I recommend this morph because, again, it offers that free damage mitigation by 10% plus the block cost reduction by 10%. The damage mitigation is not mathematically incredibly significant because of how it is calculated in the damage mitigation formula. However, the block cost reduction can be noticeable for sure, in my opinion. And that's pretty much it for that one. On the back bar, again, you can have Talons. And Talons is going to apply AoE Minor Maim, which is the same debuff as Heroic Slash, but just in the AoE version. Plus, it's going to root enemies. So there's going to be a lot of enemy mobs in dungeons or arenas coming to the group, and Choking Talons is both gonna minor maim and root them so they don't move, giving you time to react, giving your group time to react. But also it does offer the Ignite synergy, which is pretty nice to have because the synergy damage, all synergy damage scales off of the Synergizer's stats. So it doesn't scale off of your tank stats, like 4,936 magic damage. Lame, but that's your tooltip, not your DPS's tooltip. That's not what they will get. They'll get a lot more out of the Ignite synergy. But again, since we do have Symphony, you definitely have to try to find room for Talons or for whatever you need. Like, skills are very situational. For a lot of fights, I don't run Talons. For trash, I do. Depending on the build setup or how the group's doing things. Sometimes I don't even slot Heroic Slash. I think in my Unchained run, my very first Unchained run on the last arena, Black Rose Prison, Veteran Black Rose Prison. Unchained is basically the title you get for doing no death speedrun without using any sigils. I'm pretty sure I replaced Heroic Slash with Choking Talons. So again, skill bar is very situational. This is a template for you guys to work around with. But for sure, the most indispensable skills are going to be chains, form of taunt somewhere, alter, or a heal for your allies and yourself to proc Symphony, plus something to proc Olorime like Blockade while also keeping up your Crusher debuff and such. And also a source of Major War, Major Resolve, like Balance. Now, Balance, we kind of already talked about Blockade And inner rage is basically just a ranged taunt that you can use unranged instead of going up and poking up every single ad. I want to talk about balance for a little bit. And why is this build gonna have infinite sustain? So as a Dragon Knight, we get stamina back from using magic abilities. With the Asylum Sword and Board set, we get stamina back from using magic abilities. Or, I mean, we get magic back from using stamina abilities. Sorry, I just got a little confused there. We basically have this complete recycling system. We kind of pretty much finished what Dragon Knight was missing in terms of its recycling system. Not only can we give ourselves, for example, stand back. See, I'm holding block, I'm not getting stand back, but when I cast an Earth and Heart ability like Alien Shield, I do get stand back. Not only do I get stand back from using magic abilities, but now I get magic back from using a stam ability. So this is pretty much gonna feed into itself ironically, an Ouroboros of a sort. Anyway, balance comes into play here because not only does it give us major resolve, increasing our physical and spell resistance up to this amount, but also it is a pretty much free source of magicka. Although it does reduce your healing done and damage shield strength by 50% for 4 seconds, experienced tanks know when to use this, even without a healer. You can use this without a healer, but this is just another way of getting magicka back immediately if you don't have stamina. For whatever reason, let's say you're under high duress, you're really low in stamina, and you also need magicka, your potion is down, you don't have an ultimate, like the worst, absolutely worst case scenario. The balance is going to be really handy here in terms of getting some extra magicka back to get some stamina back. I've been saved by balance so many times more than I can count in both Black Rose and Dragonstar Arena for sustain. It's just an amazing skill to have for sure. Dragon Blood is our burst heal. In terms of using it as a burst heal, a common mistake I see Dragon Knight tanks do is when their health dips to like, let me go. When their health dips to like 60-70%, they just like use their burst heal. But that's not how you should be using Dragon Blood. How you should be using Dragon Blood is when you get to a low enough point, about at least, I would say at least 40-50%, but the lower the better. Obviously you shouldn't try to ever be low as a tank, but this is just an example. So as you can see, the burst heal is much more immense. And as you just saw, like that 15k tick compared to the 6.4k tick, there's a pretty big difference. As it says, draw on your Draconic Blood to heal for 38% of your missing health, not your max health. It doesn't scale off of your max health, it scales off of your missing health. And you also gain Measure Fortitude, Measure Endurance, and Minor Vitality, which increases your health recovery and stamina recovery by 20%, and healing received by 8% for 23 seconds. The other morph just kind of does not offer all these things, like including Minor Vitality, so definitely go with Green Dragon Blood. What makes this Dragon Knight tank tick? Well, we can look at the passives here. In terms of passives, the Ardent Flame passives don't really offer much except the Combustion passive, which may, depending on your setup, and there isn't really anything you can use in terms of within the context of this build to proc that Combustion. But you can use like Engulfing Flames if you need to buff your mag DPS, even if it's only by a fraction of the original 10% before it got nerfed for tanking. But other than that, your most important passives are going to come from the Draconic and Earth and Heart passive skill lines. Iron Skin, increase the amount of damage you block by 10%. This applies to both your bars, regardless of whether you're holding a sword and board or not. Burning Heart, while a Draconic power ability is active, your healing received from both yourself and your healer is increased by 12%. Elder Dragon, it's just a nice free health recovery. That's why our health recovery is like a bit high, especially when you consider the fact that Bit with Sugar Skulls is giving you health recovery. Scaled Armor is going to give you free spell resistance mitigation, and this is why on our character sheet, our spell resistance is naturally higher than our physical resistance. In terms of Earth and Heart abilities, we kind of keep going back to this, but I'll go over it again. Increase the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities by 20%. Nice for the shield, nice for the Cinderstorm, etc. Battle Roar, when you cast a ultimate, and depending on the cost of the ultimate, you get more back. Pretty nifty to have. You basically, as a Dragon Knight tank, rotate your potion with your ultimate. So a lot of tanks, a lot of Dragon Knight tanks that start out make the mistake of, oh, okay, I need resources, I only pop a potion, and then they blow your horn, or a horn, or an ultimate, and it's like, what a waste. Why not use a potion? Then wait again until your resources run out, and then blow your ultimate. That's how you can cycle this. This whole thing is basically a recycling system. Not only do you have the Asylum Sword and Board giving you Magicka back using Stam, and your Earth and Heart passives like Helping Hands giving you Stam back after using Magicka, and now you also have Balance giving you free Magicka to help out in times of need. Plus you have Battle Roar and a potion, which you can rotate on. This is ridiculous. This build is ridiculous. I've been enjoying it quite a bit on both live and BTS, and I hope you guys enjoy it. In terms of alternative skills you can use, I kind of went over some of these already, like Cauterize, Cinderstorm, and some people have asked me, well, why not use Dragon Knight Source of Major War, Major Resolve? These don't give Magicka back like Balance does. That's why I go with Balance. Another nice skill to have is going to be like Protective Plate. Gives you immunity to snares and immobilizations, but also gives you a reduction of damage taken from projectiles by 50%. This is used to completely reflect or absorb 100% of the damage of projectiles. So, while the 50% is definitely a nerf compared to the original or the previous version, it's still a really nice skill to have. Even in trials, and even in forming content, where there are projectiles involved. Inhale, this Inhale ability, you should morph to Deep Breath. It's going to be an AoE interrupt on things that are channeling. In Blocker's Prison, the last arena comes to mind for sure, in terms of interrupting those nasty ghosts and ads that keep channeling one after another. And you definitely want all passives here, for sure, from the Sword and Board skill line. In terms of Destruction Staff, don't go Tri-Focus. It's kind of like whatever. Doesn't really give you any bonuses, really, except if you're going to use a Frost Staff, it uses Magicka instead of Stamina, which I don't recommend for this build. Other than that, Crushing Shock can be nice to have if you're having trouble interrupting certain mechanics, like in Fengler Last Boss, although you can ask somebody to do so. You want the rest of the passives. Armor, you definitely want all the heavy armor passives. You don't need to have all the medium armor and light armor passives for this build. You can definitely just pick the first 3 passives: light armor, snare reduction, sprint cost reduction, free magic recovery per light armor piece, free spell resistance mitigation, and for medium armor, athletics and Windwalker are really good passes to have, because athletics gives you movement speed, bonus of sprint, and dodge roll cost reduction, while Windwalker gives you stam recovery if you don't happen to be blocking all the time. And also it reduces the cost of your stam abilities by 2% per piece of medium armor equipped. And if you noticed earlier while I was talking about the item sets, you notice that I had a medium head and a light head and 5 heavy. This is pretty important because not only does it play into the passives you can get from all 3 skill lines, it also plays into the Undaunted passives, where Undaunted Metal increases your max health, stamina, and Magicka by 2% per type of armor: heavy, medium, and light. So I get a bonus of 6% extra more stats because I'm wearing 3 different types of armor. That's pretty good. Other than that, other skills that you can look up is Efficient Purge. Again, as Vigor was mentioned, Echoing Vigor, not resolving, as resolving does not affect other people to proc your Symphony. The other Morpho Purge should also proc Symphony, but it's a bit too expensive. So Efficient Purge is definitely what you want. In terms of crafting passives, definitely always get Medicinal Use. Can be a real big help here, getting that 30% longer duration on potions. But yeah, that is pretty much it in terms of skills. in terms of champion points. This red mitigation CP is the most optimized CP allocation for Black Rose Prison. If you can do Black Rose Prison with the CP, you're good to go. I know a lot of people ask me, well, what if I have 300 CP, 400 CP, 500 CP? How do I allocate my CP? I would say come to the ESO University Discord, and I'll try to answer your question there, because everybody seems to have varying amounts of CP, and I'll try to do my best for you. Otherwise, this is kind of what you're going to have at full CP. And most people who are 200, 300, 400 CP are probably not going to be able to farm some of this stuff, including like the Symphony from Deaths and Molotov, but definitely can try to help you with your CP applications if possible. 81 Ironclad. Really, really nice. 56 Hardy, 56 Ellie, 66 Stick. So the Ironclad is going to reduce or increase your mitigation against direct damage attacks. This doesn't have anything to do really with your resistances. It's sort of a different mitigation factor. Same with Hardy and Ellie. This doesn't mean you get 12% physical or spell resistance. This just is a damage mitigation against these types of attacks. And this is why CP is so powerful, especially mitigation CP, because it stacks with resistances. It's not adding to resistances, it's separate. Anyway, we got 56 Hardy, 56 Ellie, 66 Thick Skin. Thick Skin also, your 22% damage taken from damage over time effects, dots basically, is reduced by 22%. Really nice. 11 Quick Recovery. This can go somewhere like here, like Heavy Armor Focus, in fact, especially if you think your physical resistance is a bit low. So for example, if I buff it up again, we're around 20, almost 25, 24,000, 24.5k resistances. So you can do something like that if you feel like your resistances need a bit of a boost. Otherwise, if you had to choose from where to draw those points, you could draw from Thick Skin. And for green CP, this is going to be 51 Warlord, 16 Bashing Focus. In terms of Arcanist, this is going to be dependent. The only reason why I have 60 points Arcanist was because I was testing with Atronach earlier. If you have the Lord, the 64 Arcanist is not going to do much at all. So you could invest more into Tenacity, you could invest more into Sprinter, Bashing Focus, or you could pretty much also do 100 Shadow Ward, but at 72 Shadow Ward, even with about 4 sturdy pieces, as I do of my body, that's more than enough block cost reduction for both trials and 4-man content. And this is part of the reason why I said earlier, oh, I don't need block cost reduction enchant on my jewelry, because I have 72 points in the Shadow Ward, plus sturdy, which, by the way, reduces your block cost by 4% per golden quality item. So again, it's really up to you. Your green CP will depend on your playstyle and your stats at a certain point. For blue CP, this is pretty straightforward. 64 Blessed, 56 Elfborn. Affects both our healing done with not only like Vigor, Energy Orb, and Dragon Blood. Elfborn also does affect our Dragon Blood and such, so that's pretty important to have. The perks are there, just kind of there, nothing really significant. In terms of the Atronach tree, we have 28 into Master at Arms, 2 into Physical Weapon Expert, and this is because we just want the Retaliation Repose passive. The Repose passive is basically free damage. When you block a melee attack, you have a 50% chance to deal X amount of physical damage to the enemy. That occurs once every 55 seconds. This is free damage, it's like a white hunt, and you have more than enough blue points to do it. After a certain while, if you put like 100 Blessed, it doesn't scale very nicely. After a certain point, after 56, 64 Blessed, it doesn't really matter how much you put in Blessed. That's why we have enough like leftover points, like about 30 points to put into the Atro for the Riposte. And in terms of the Ritual tree, we want to unlock the Last Stand perk. When you fall below 20% health, you can measure Heroism, granting 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. If you happen to fall below 20% health, and as a Dragon Knight especially, that major heroism combined with the minor heroism is going to give you, it's probably going to give you your next ulti really fucking fast. Really, really, really fast. So definitely, it's pretty much almost a must to have this perk unlocked with 120 points total, which is why we have 120 points total put into the Ritual. So if you're going to use a heal like Vigor, Precise Strikes is definitely a good investment, because Vigor is a stand-based heal ability is going to be affected by precise strikes, which affects your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities. If you're not going to use Vigor and just stick with Alter or a Magicka-based heal for your group and yourself, you can pretty much do 100 damage, 20 precise strikes, something like that. But otherwise, this is roughly what it's going to look like. That is pretty much it for the Infinity tank build. Hopefully you guys enjoy it, just like you did for Herostorm. It's definitely still relevant and very, very strong. It's stronger than its Herostorm iteration due to the buffs the Symphony Blades and the Asylum Swords and Board got. Let me know if you are enjoying it in the comments below. If you have any questions about the build and so forth, let me know down in the comments below as well. This is going to be the first of the class tank builds I'll be updating for Greymoor, starting with the Dragon Knight, and then the next one will be the Corruption Necromancer tank build, and after that it's going to be the Sorcerer, Nightblade, and Templar, and so forth, and Warden. I almost forgot Warden. But yeah, I really, really, really appreciate you guys supporting my content creation, my channel. We've had a lot of fun together. I think we've had a lot of fun on both the stream and the YouTube channel, for sure. Theory crafting again. In fact, I think unless you missed the community post I did before the Greymoor patch, in regards to my plans for ESO, I plan on staking at least 5 more years into it, at least, because it has a lot of potential. It's a great game. I love its community. I love you guys, and I'm going to be actually be making healer builds again consistently for starting with Greymoor after I update these tank builds. Expect to see the CP allocations updated, particularly for Kind's Aegis Veteran and Hardmoon. And also expect to see the ESO-U.com ESO University website up in about 6 weeks. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the content and you want to support me, definitely subscribe to the channel. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Hopefully you are staying safe and healthy from the coronavirus pandemic. And I'll see you guys next time. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have fun.